Well, welcome everyone. Glad you could make it. I'm Vince Long. I'm the County Administrator for Leon County, and I just want to welcome you all to the County Commission Chambers for this important community conversation. My job tonight is it's easy. It's to introduce my friend Mike Pate. But before I do that, let me just take a moment of personal job protection here and introduce the commissioner that we have here. Commissioner Kristen Dozier, County Commissioner Kristen Dozier. Thank you for. I know you would. But also before I get into Mike's introduction, a lot of pressure. Mike told me just be better than Rick Perry. So, well, not difficult. But let me extend a special welcome to Liz in Village Square for being a part of this partnership that we have in these town hall forums. And I just need to acknowledge some of the organizations that I see here: City of Tallahassee and Chief Coe and Chief Jones. Thank you for being here. I see the Sheriff's Department here and Emergency Management. It's just great to see everybody. Of course, all of our partners with TAG. And of course, let me just extend a very special welcome on behalf of the county to our guests tonight from Blacksburg. I think everybody here probably remembers that dark day in 2007. I know we do, and we felt a special kindred anguish and vulnerability as a college community here in this town. And we're so happy that you're here and that you will share your experiences with us and help us learn from those. So with that, let me introduce to you Mike Pate, a guy who needs no introduction, right? Mike had a distinguished career with Knight Ridder, as you all probably know, and which culminated in 2006 with his retirement from the Tallahassee Democrat, where he served as publisher and president. Of course, that career of his spanned 37 years, distinguished career, and as he moved from the fast pace of the newspaper business, he hardly slowed down. Seems like he's just sort of hitting his stride now. Did a few years with the Knight Foundation as their program director, and we're so fortunate to have Mike's lend his talents to us in leading our very own Tallahassee Town and Gown initiative, or TAG. And so we're just so happy to have you here, Mike, and thank you for moderating. And again, thank you for lending your leadership and your talents to this initiative. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mike Pate, all-around good guy.
Thank you, Vince. It's a delight to be here, and I really do want to take just a moment to thank the county and Vince and his staff for working with us to be able to pull this program together here in the County Commission Chambers tonight. It's always a delight to be here, and I'm glad that I'm facing this direction instead of having to face the other direction and deal with the commission tonight. So it's a delight to be able to do that. So we're glad to have all of you here, and look forward to what I think will be a very interesting evening of discussion with our friends from Blacksburg and Virginia Tech. All of you know about some of the backgrounds of that community, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the individuals. But before I do that, I want to give you just a minute or two on updating you on some information about TAG. Some of you may be very familiar with the program. Some of you may not be quite so familiar. So I want to give you just a little bit of background on it. TAG is a program that started as a result of some work that those of us in the community were doing, where we were looking at things that needed to be done in the community. And one of the things that we saw was that there was a real opportunity for us to improve the relationships and the working relationships we have between our universities and the community. We realized that there was an opportunity there for us to take advantage of that, and as a result, we started having conversations with folks in the community, trying to figure out how do we approach that, and how do we make sure that we bring this community together in ways that can be positive for the community and help us to be able to go forward. Part of that goal is looking for ways to make Tallahassee an even better place to live and work, and that has been our focus with this project. But with any project like this, one of the things that you have to make it work is money. These things don't happen simply out of the good of people's hearts. These folks from Virginia didn't come here without having to spend a few bucks, and we felt like it was appropriate for us to make sure that we that we covered those expenses, and we really appreciate them taking their time to be able to do that. But what you see on the slide right now is a list of our stakeholders and funders. The stakeholders obviously are the key players in this operation. Leon County, the City of Tallahassee, Florida State University, Florida A&M University, and Tallahassee Community College. Those are the folks that have the most to gain from the success of this project, and they've been absolutely marvelous partners through this whole exercise. And I really appreciate everything that they've done to make that happen. The other list of our partners is just as important, because these folks have all made financial commitments to our community and to this project to be able to make things work. And what I really love about this is that this isn't a project that's simply funded by one or two big guys who wrote great big checks. This is a project that has very broad community support from 35 different businesses and organizations in the community so far. And if you'd like to be a partner, please give me a call. We'd always be happy to talk with you about that. But the good news is that these folks have stepped forward and have said, yes, we recognize that what you're doing is important. Yes, we understand that it requires money to do that, and we're willing to step forward to make that happen. So please, if you have an opportunity to see these folks who are our stakeholders and partners, please extend your thanks to them for helping us make this program successful. The project has 4 phases. The first phase was a series of studies that was done by Oppenheimer Research, and Annalise is here tonight. And Annalise, thank you so much for the work that you've done to make this project successful. We really appreciate the time and the effort that you put into it. We did 2 surveys, one that was about 800 people in Leon County, another one that surveyed about 55 leaders in the county. The focus of those 2 studies was to understand perceptions of town and gown relations in the community. How do the leaders in the community feel about it? How do the residents feel about it? Once we did that, we established a set of priorities that we wanted to focus on, and then began working on the second phase of the project, which is what we're in now. And that second phase was to identify best practices from around the country for the areas of opportunity that we identified, and to bring people to Tallahassee to teach us some best practices of the kinds of things that they've done in their community to make their communities better places to live and work. The third phase that will occur after we finish the 5 town hall meetings that we'll be doing is a process where our board will come together and talk about trying to create a process for sustainable communication about town and gown issues in Tallahassee. How do we keep the conversation going now that we've gotten it started, and how do we continue to make that happen, and how do we find ways to make that work effectively so that all of the partners have opportunities to come to the table and have a voice at the table to talk about those issues. And then the final phase will be a series of committees and projects that will be put together to address very specific areas identified from the research and from these town hall meetings that we'll identify later to figure out what are the specific areas that we can target and focus on as we put the projects together. The areas of opportunity that we've identified are communications, economic development partnerships, environmental partnerships, public safety issues, and student engagement. 4 of those came out of the research. The 5th one, communications, came out of the first town hall forum that we had. That was what I call the data delivery forum, where we all talked about the findings in the research. And one of the conversations that occurred that night as we talked about the research was a very fascinating conversation between residents in the community and students on campus. And the students were complaining that they didn't know what was going on in town, and the residents were complaining that they didn't know what was going on campus, and it made us realize that we really needed to have a more specific conversation about communication, so we added that to the list. We are now in as I say, tonight is the 3rd in a series of 5. Our first one was on environmental partnerships. We had the University of Colorado and the city of Boulder come in town to talk about that. Our last one was in November, where we had the University of Oregon and the city of Eugene to come in to talk about communications partnerships. Tonight we'll be talking about public safety partnerships. And I'm very pleased to announce to you tonight that we finally finalized our 4th program. That will be a program that will be presented on January 26th of 2012. It will be held in the City Commission chambers of the Tallahassee City Commission at 7 o'clock, just like this one. And we will have as our guests representatives from San Jose State University and the City of San Jose, who will be coming in to talk to us about the economic development partnerships that they've created in their community. So we're really moving along nicely. And then the fifth and final one will be on student engagement. And I'll be real honest, we haven't selected the program that we want to look at yet. Right now, we're talking to folks at Texas A&M, the University of Kentucky, and the University of Maryland to see which of several programs that we're looking at might work most effectively from a best practice standpoint for Tallahassee. Tonight, we're going to be talking about public safety issues and public safety partnerships. Just to give you a little bit of the information that came out of our study, what you see here are one of the slides from the resident survey that we did of over 800 residents in Tallahassee who were asked about what were the most important issues for them as they looked at town and gown relationships and how we should be looking at these issues. And I think the key thing that you see here is that our residents said that economic development partnerships was number one, but number two on the list of the residents' concerns was public safety issues. And to parallel that, what you see here in terms of the leadership survey was very similar. And this was out of a list of 20 items that we gave them to look at. They ranked the leadership also ranked the public safety issues as the number 4 in importance for them. Our next steps now will be to take the information that we've learned from this, move forward to begin to understand more about what we want to do to be able to sustain the conversations between the community and the universities, and then be able to look at specific projects that will help us move forward. I loved this quote from President Barron at Florida State when we were talking about the importance of this project, and I loved this statement because it really encompasses all that we're trying to work at when he said, "This initiative will serve as an important reminder that our futures are inextricably linked and that we work best when we work together." I thought that was a really nice statement on exactly what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to get to. And with that in mind, let me take now a moment to introduce our two speakers for the evening. First of all is Dr. Frank Cuccia Jr. Frank serves as the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Assistant Professor of Higher Education at Virginia Tech. In addition to serving as Deputy to the Vice President for Student Affairs, Frank also provides leadership for 5 departments in the university: Housing and Residence Life, Career Services, Fraternity and Sorority Life, Dining Services, and Student Conduct. In this capacity, Frank leads a staff of 2,000 full-time and part-time employees and a budget of over $80 million. Among other responsibility, Frank also serves as co-chair of the Town of Blacksburg and Virginia Tech Town and Gown Committee, which I think is a brilliant idea. Frank's writing and research interests focus on student learning and engagement, positive psychology and its influence on student growth and development, and reorganizing colleges and universities to ensure that every student belongs to a community of care consisting of faculty, staff, and students. Frank is a frequent contributor to About Campus and serves on the editorial boards of both the Journal of Student Affairs Research and Practice and the Journal of College and University Student Housing, where he also serves as associate editor. Frank holds degrees from Baylor University, Ohio State University, and the University of Maryland, College Park. Our other guest this evening is Steve Ross. Steve is the Deputy Town Manager for the town of Blacksburg. Prior to moving to Blacksburg, Steve enjoyed over 15 years of experience in local government administration, primarily serving as assistant to the city manager for the city of Largo, Florida. He is a 1991 graduate of the University of South Florida. As Deputy Town Manager, Steve works primarily in the areas of finance, human resources, information technology, transit services and housing, and neighborhood services. He serves as the town's liaison to the Blacksburg Volunteer Fire Department and the Blacksburg Volunteer Rescue Squad. He is also co-chair of the Blacksburg Virginia Tech Town and Gown Committee, which I think is a brilliant idea. And he is also vice chair of the New River Valley Home Consortium. He's also responsible for assisting in the preparation of the annual operating budget and capital improvement program and conducting analyses, studies, and reports on administrative and operational issues. Mr. Ross has completed the University of South Florida's Executive Fellows Program, the the Government Finance Officers Association, Advanced Government Finance Institute at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the University of Virginia's Senior Executive Institute at the Darden School of Business. Obviously, well-credentialed on both parts, but on the other hand, I got to know these guys today. They're real people, real human beings who love their community, love their university, and are really making a difference in Blacksburg and Virginia Tech, and we are very honored to have them here. Gentlemen, we'll leave the floor to you. Thank you very much. Please welcome.
My concern with that introduction, when you finished up with the talk about spending the day with us and really getting to know us, I was afraid what was going to come after that line. We had a really good time today. I want to thank Mike and everybody for the time they spent with us today, touring us around Tallahassee, sharing the story of Tallahassee and the universities, in the tag. I think this is a great initiative that you've undertaken to try to help bring the university community and town, city, Tallahassee, and the county together closer. What I want to do is kind of start this conversation or start this presentation off just providing a little background about Blacksburg and Virginia Tech. And a little bit about myself also, as Mike mentioned, is I am from Florida. I was raised in St. Petersburg. I went to the University of South Florida. I've spent time here in Tallahassee with friends. And so I'm familiar with the area. Sorry about that. And familiar with the area. And when I went to Blacksburg, it's a very different community. Blacksburg and Virginia Tech. It's truly a small college town with a large university. And you'll see that as we go into the presentation. Sorry about that. But while they're trying to fix my PowerPoint, Blacksburg, it's a small town. It's a town of 42,000 people, but it's got a population of 30,000 college students. So it's really a town of about 12,000 people with a large university. Yeah. Sure. I'll keep on going ahead. I had a city manager who told me always be prepared when your PowerPoint doesn't work. We'll go on the fly here. Blacksburg has a deep, long history. It was founded in 1871, a history that's very proud of. Virginia is very proud of its history, to the point that sometimes I wonder if they realized that there was history outside of the state of Virginia in this country. And I say that being from Florida so I can have fun with Virginia. Blacksburg has also been noted as one of the best places to live in the country by various sources, Money Magazine, Outdoor Living, those type of recognitions. One of the beautiful things about Blacksburg and it being a small town is the relationships that you can form and the small town atmosphere that you've got there. We have a quaint downtown that is very active and very vibrant. It's literally one street. There we go. See if I can get this. There we go. There we go. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Go back to the presentation a little bit to kind of orient you to where Blacksburg is. We're in the southwest part of Virginia. We're about 3 hours north of Charlotte, North Carolina, and about an hour south of the West Virginia border. We're located between the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains on a plateau about 2,000 feet above sea level. It's one of the most beautiful areas you can imagine in the country. This is the New River, which flows through the area. We're in the New River Valley, is what the region is called. This is not a doctored picture. This is Blacksburg in the New River Valley in the fall. Here's just a view from a residential neighborhood in the community, just sharing the natural beauty, and that's one of the things that Blacksburg is very proud of, and that you'll hear as a common theme both through the community and also with the university with its architecture and its style. Just an example of a residential home in our community. Like I said, there's a long, deep history in Blacksburg and of people that have been there for many, many decades. This is a picture of our downtown, giving you a sense of what our downtown looks like. It's a very active, very vibrant place. People are very proud of it. There's been a lot of investment, public investment in the downtown to make it an active, vibrant place that people want to shop and they want to live down in our downtown. This is an example of our downtown. We took essentially a parking lot, an asphalted area, and turned it into a market, to a farmer, the Market Square Park, the park with the farmers market in it. Very active every Saturday, every Wednesday afternoon. There's a farmers market there with a lot of activity and different events that will go on there. Next picture of our downtown, of just the closeness and the activity that goes on down there with the shopping and those type of events. Some of the improvements we just recently made. I've heard a lot about wanting to create a sense of place. I think Blacksburg has accomplished that already. Our tagline is actually a special place, because it really is a special place when you've been there and you spent time there. We have many people, many graduates of Virginia Tech that moved back to Blacksburg because they want to be in the community, want to enjoy the beauty of the area. And as part of maintaining that special place, we've made a lot of public investment into the downtown to create a more walkable, livable downtown. Again, this is just an example of some of the activities in our downtown. Lyric Theater is a local community theater. Is a good example, I think, of the quality of life in Blacksburg and the value that the community puts on quality of life and how it pulls together to work together. The Lyric was obviously a movie theater at one point, and it had become very run down and dilapidated, and the community came together and raised the funds to renovate it and then to run it as a nonprofit. So the Lyric was taken from nothing, built back up to be a significant treasure of the community, where there's local theater, local movies, speakers come and speak at the Lyric, and it's all supported through contributions and donations, and there are some grants they do receive for it. Just another picture of the downtown. Again, I showed a lot of pictures of the downtown because of the pride we have in that. Virginia Tech is obviously a wonderful university, highly ranked, highly recognized, very prestigious university. In the town and Virginia Tech are very close, as you'll see in some pictures. Virginia Tech, I think, was founded in 1872. It's largely started as an engineering school. It has a large corps of cadets, which is one of the few universities that still has a corps of cadets remaining, which adds to some of the beauty, some of the things we can enjoy in the community. It's kind of fun when you see the corps and they're marching and they're practicing, and then they have the band. It really gives you that quaint sense of feel, because you can be pretty much anywhere in town and you can hear the band playing and marching. This is the hallmark building for the University of Verse Hall, an example of the wonderful architecture that you'll find on the Virginia Tech campus, this Gothic style. As we were talking today, as we were driving around, one of the things that Frank mentioned was that Virginia Tech has stuck to a consistent core theme for its buildings. The building has what they call Hokie Stone. There's actually a quarry that's in Blacksburg where they quarry the stone for those buildings. It's the only place that you can get that stone, and it's the only place that's ever used is on the Virginia Tech campus. So that creates a real uniqueness for the campus. The students are what really are the heartbeat of Virginia Tech, obviously, and for the town. They bring an incredible amount of energy to the community. It's very noticeable when they're not there. You can see the pace of the community really slows down. And it's actually something sometimes that people look forward to. They come in the fall. They bring a great energy. We get into football season, and it's just really this great energy. And then by the spring, you're wearing down. I guess it's maybe an age as we get a little older. You don't move quite at that pace. And so when they leave in May, the summers are really nice. Not because they're necessarily gone, but just because the pace slows down and it becomes a very small town. And that's where you really get to realize that we do live in a small town of 12,000 people. because you see your neighbors, you know everybody knows each other. It's very, it's very much like a Mayberry type of atmosphere in Blacksburg, which is a lovely feature of it. Again, this is another picture of the Virginia Tech campus. This picture, as you see, the large grass area is what they refer to as their drill field. As I said earlier, they have the Corps cadets. So there is some military influence to the university. And the drill field is the centerpiece of the university. And everything is designed and built around it. And as you can see, the example of that building with the Pokestone on it. This slide gives you a sense of the size of the university. And I'll show you the relationship of the University of Town in just a moment. But it's a large university. It's over 125 buildings on campus, and there's 2,600 acres that Virginia Tech has in Blacksburg alone. They have some remote some satellite campuses and buildings, facilities, other places. But in Blacksburg, their presence is pronounced. And you'll see that in this next slide that I try to present to you is the yellow areas in this slide. That's Virginia Tech. And then the surrounding areas, obviously, are Blacksburg. As you can see, Virginia Tech has a large presence in our community. Really, Virginia Tech is Blacksburg, and Blacksburg is Virginia Tech. As we drove around today, we talked a little bit about different areas in Tallahassee, and I asked the question of Mike, is it possible to live in Tallahassee and really not get interaction with students or the university? And he said it's possible to do that here. It's not possible in Blacksburg. They're just so closely linked that student life and that activity is just surrounding you, and that's a wonderful thing. But again, I go back to that energy. It brings such energy, vibrancy to the community, to you. It's very enriching. If you have a family, I have a young daughter. It's just wonderful for her to be able to enjoy the benefits of a university community, the energy, the activities. She's fortunate to participate in a music program on campus that really has helped her boost not only her musical skills, her own self-esteem, and being able to spend time as a young 13-year-old, 10-year-old when she started, spend time on a college campus and be around college kids and really learn from them. This picture shows you is a picture of the campus and the town. As you can see from the earlier map, they're one and the same. And this picture is, unless you're familiar with it like Frank and I, you couldn't tell what was the town and what was the campus here. And that's how the relationship is. It's blended. We're together. We're linked. And that's what makes our relationship such a beautiful thing, that we're able to recognize that not only are we physically linked, but emotionally we're linked, mentally we're linked, and how we work together. Here's another picture of our downtown. I'll try to show you what a little bit of the winter is like in Blacksburg at times. This is a good winter day in Blacksburg. You can see the streets. But again, this picture is to show you from a different angle the relationship of the town and the university. This is a mixture of part town, part university. On this picture, looking at it, to the left of it is the university, and you see a smokestack. That's actually Virginia Tech power plant. They have their own power plant that provides power service to the campus in about half of the town. But again, you can just see how blended we are and how essentially we are one. This is our town gown mission and vision statement. Our town gown committee came together in 1999. It came together to bring a diverse group of people to the table for conversation. There wasn't a particular or specific issue or incident that occurred at that time. It was just an idea of people that, we have a relationship here, and we need to make sure that we recognize it, we build it, we maintain it, and we sustain it. So since 1999, we've developed this relationship through Town Gown, and this is just one relationship that we have with the university. Frank and I co-chair this committee, and this is really a place for students and citizens to get together and talk. talk about the issues that of common interest to them. There's other areas, other ways, and Frank is going to talk about those, about how the university and the town, relate on a town gown basis. So at this point, I'll let Frank come up and speak.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and forever I have watched. Tallahassee to me has been Florida State, and it's been, and I've actually had bad feelings towards you, and I apologize. So now I feel much better about that. One of the things I like about the way Steve set this up is if a tragedy like what happened at Virginia Tech can happen in Blacksburg, it could absolutely happen anywhere. I have been at Ohio State University and the University of Maryland. I also worked at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona, and Baylor University in Waco. Of all the places that an incident like what occurred on April 16, 2007, it happened, Blacksburg, to me, would have been the least likely place in America. When Steve describes it as Mayberry, it really is like that. Steve mentioned a little bit about in 1999. I think one of the things that you might be tempted to do is to say, gosh, well, Blacksburg is a small town, and surely you can get along in a small town. And actually, I think small towns can be even more complicated at times in relationships. And one of the things I want to point out to you is that we've had some rough times relationally in Blacksburg, and that's really where the Town Gown Committee came about. And since we're talking about public safety, I want to make a connect with what we're talking to the students about and what we're trying to do with town gown relations. And it's this idea of moving from cooperation to collaboration. And those are very different things, cooperation and collaboration. Cooperation is agreeing to get along with one another. Collaboration is working together, sharing resources, and those kinds of things. And to connect that to public safety, these are particularly important things. We've been thinking a lot at Virginia Tech about our motto is ut prosim, that I may serve, and what it means to send students out into the world to have a sense of responsibility to actively participate in their communities. And some of the things that have come out of that, particularly post April 16, 2007, is an awareness, a wakening up to the idea that we all are in this together. And I want to tell you about a particular program that our students started. We have a psychology professor who has built a career around a program. It's called Actively Caring for People, and they have a green wristband. And I actually brought them from Virginia from you, but they're in my hotel room. So you're welcome to swing by, and I'll give you a green wristband. But he would tell the students it was about behavioral modification, and he used it primarily in industry to help people begin to care about the safety of other people in their particular industries. And it was an idea that caring is one thing, but actively caring is another thing. Caring, you can care, but you can care and not do anything. And actively caring is the idea is you can care, but then you can engage. You can actually take the next step and do something as a result of your caring. So he used this in industry to particularly on construction sites, to help companies, help people not be bystanders, to actually engage safety concerns. Well, after 416, our students took this on and expanded it to the whole idea of caring for people around you, not being bystanders, being alert. We've been thinking a lot. There's a large body of research out there that started really with Ellen Langer. She's a psychologist at Harvard, and it's this idea of mindfulness, and that many of us in our society and our communities now have become mindless. We're in a rut, and you can see a lot of this with people on their electronic devices. And Ellen Langer challenges us to wake up to what's around us, to wake up to the world that's around us. And this is very much something these students are trying to do. So they have implemented actively caring for people. And if you came to Blacksburg, you would see students wearing a green wristband, which is an opportunity to catch someone doing something right and thank them for caring. But it's all part of a grander scheme to wake people up to the possibilities and to make them aware of what's going on around them. So where does this all connect here is moving from cooperation to collaboration. I also mentioned that we're not big fans of the term agree to disagree. We would much rather agree to keep disagreeing, because agree to disagree means the conversation is over. Agreeing to keep disagreeing, it means that we're going to keep coming to the table and talking. And so much of what we have organized in Blacksburg are a commitment to two things. One, that we're going to continue to come together, and we're creating systems to come together and talk. And we're going to keep doing it on a regular basis. And so let me share with you organizationally how this plays out. And in almost every level of this, there's going to be there's a public safety component of this, because on almost every level, the police or our emergency response or emergency preparedness people are at the table. But I'm an organizational behavioralist in my academic preparation, and there's an organizational model. It's simple. It's called an amplifying loop, and it goes a little like this, that interacting, particularly when there's a commitment, leads to liking. And liking leads to more interaction. And more interaction creates more liking. And converse, lack of interaction leads to disliking, and disliking leads to less interaction. So one of the things that we have really done is we've just committed that we're going to interact, and we're going to keep interacting. And that commitment has led to liking. I actually like Steve. He's a nice guy. I'm committed to Steve. He's the deputy town manager, and I co-chair this committee with him. But we tried to systematically create loops of communication at multiple levels. So here's what they look like. Steve and I co-chair the Town Gown Committee. It meets once a month, the third Thursday of every month. You can count on it. It's going to happen every month. And the police are going to be there, a police officer representative from the Virginia Tech Police Department, from the Blacksburg Police Department, one of our town council members, Steve, me, our student body president, the president of our interfraternity council, the president of our Panhellenic council, a number of community, our apartment council, a number of community leaders that are just very interested in town gown kinds of relationships. They're there. But we have them in other places. We have a town tech lunch. My boss, who's the vice president, as well as our vice president for administrative services, the mayor, Steve, the town manager, they get together once a month. You can set your clock to it for lunch to talk about town issues. We also have an off-campus housing committee that the neighborhood relations person from the town co-chairs with someone from our fraternity and sorority life office once a month with students that live in fraternity and sorority houses. Last month, I got a call that says, we're having trouble with fire code inspection kinds of things. Do you mind if I talk to this group about it? So all over the place, there are little circles of communication, committed circles of communication where issues are being dealt with over and over and over again. The town of Blacksburg and the Virginia Tech police chief, they eat lunch once a week together. The two chiefs, once a week. So I could give you 3 or 4 more of these little circles that are happening on a regular basis. And these are where the little issues get dealt with that, if you're not careful, become big issues. But before they become big issues, they get tackled. Interestingly, we have a town that's very close to us that has a university in the town. And it has a very different relational ethos. It's a small town just like us. But my sense is, whether you're in Columbus, Ohio, or you're in Flagstaff, Arizona, or College Park, Maryland, or Blacksburg, Virginia, that the mechanisms for frequent and constant communication, a commitment to trusting one another and talking to one another about difficult issues, and a commitment to continue to disagree when you can't bring resolve to something, but committing to the relationship, that those components make all the difference in the world. And my sense is that those are the kinds of things that make your community safer. When we talk about public safety, we're all talking about tactics, safety tactics. In our university community, we're often talking about protocols and procedures, and these are all very important. But I think that relationships and the way you go about relationships and build systems for relationships are ultimately what make a town and a community safer than good procedures. You need them both. But if I had to choose one over the other, I would choose mindful, dedicated community members and citizens over the policies and protocols. We're glad we have them both. There's a couple best practices in the town of Blacksburg that I think we've done that are good examples of collaboration. One of them is our alcohol task force collaboration. We applied together for ABC grants. We recently applied for a grant. We had a grant for a pedestrian safety campaign that we did together. Talk about pedestrian safety in Blacksburg and on campus. We tackle game day educational programs to get people to behave and to be more thoughtful in the community. We also collaborated with the grant to a moving off-campus video, helping our students think in advance about what it means to be a good citizen when they move from Blacksburg off campus. So those are a couple particular examples, and I'll let Steve talk about a few more.
I think Frank speaks so glowingly about the relationship, and it's a wonderful relationship, and it is about trust and trusting in each other. I had a green bracelet at one point, but I gave it away, and that's the idea behind the actively caring is when you see somebody doing something positive, go ahead and give them your bracelet, and you'll receive one in return at some point when somebody recognizes you as doing something where you're actively caring. And that's just really strong. That strikes through at all of us. The university and the town have a lot of different strong relationships, as Frank has described and I've described earlier. And this is an example of one with their transit system. It's something that was started together in the early 1980s. We've been providing transit services for 25 years. With 42,000, with 30,000 students in the community and limited parking on campus, Blacksburg Transit is an essential service to the university and to the students and moving them around. Last year we had 3 million passengers ride the Blacksburg Transit system. I mean, think 3 million passengers in a community of 42,000 people. That's a lot of people riding a bus a lot of times. And that's the main mode of transportation, whether it be for classes or for weekend activities for students going out, whether it be parties or going out to shopping. We've worked together on economic development issues. Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center is really a springboard of research that, as it starts on campus and moves over into the research center part, they become profit-making ventures and serves as an incubator for corporations. We have a osteopathic medical school in Blacksburg that's located in the research center part. It was started within about 8 years ago now, and it's been very successful and has branched out to several other places. And again, this is working together to recruit this medical school to the town and to the university to work together on that. Frank mentioned the relationships between the police departments, and it starts at the top. And I know there's several police chiefs and sheriffs and deputies and officers that are here, and it's really a strong and unique relationship between the two police departments. And again, it starts with the two chiefs who are very close and know each other very, very well. And it flows back to the quaintness of the community and the closeness of the community, that we all know each other. it's unusual. People think it's unusual that I, as a deputy town manager, would know the police chief for Virginia Tech as well as I do. But because it's so small, we know each other, we see each other, we work with each other in different ways. And it's not just the police chief; it's all the way throughout the organizations. This is just a picture of one of our officers in our downtown, who has really established relationships with our downtown business owners. These are some of the town gown issues that we deal with, and this is why, what Frank sometimes mentioned about, agreeing to continue to disagree. And these are some issues that we do agree on. It's just what the solution is. The picture at the top is a house. It just happens to have Greek letters on it, but it could be one of many houses where it suffers from what we call the red cup syndrome, and that's probably a picture of that's probably maybe Saturday morning after some parties the night before with red cups littering the yard, and those are some of the big issues in our community, because we have two conflicting lifestyles together. We have the student lifestyle and the non-student lifestyle, and they're very different. And trying to get them to be harmonious is challenging, and getting them to understand each other. And that's what a large part of some of our time is spent on, is trying to get them to live together, to understand each other, to respect each other's lifestyles. The picture below is an issue of, you see, I think there's 6 cars in that picture in one house. They're not even all parked in the driveway. Some of it's parked on the grass-covered snow. That's symptomatic of several things. Obviously, there's cars parked in the grass, which is a problem. We have a law and ordinance that doesn't allow more than 3 unrelated people to live in a home, and that's probably at least 6 people or 5 people living in that house, which leads to other problems. So it's trying to forge ways to get people to work together, to live together, and that's one of the goals that we have through our town gown committee. This is a picture of a street festival that we have that happens in Blacksburg, and Blacksburg is very interesting in the sense of what I call the tale of two Blacksburgs. During the day, it's quiet. You saw some earlier pictures, very quaint, people walking around. You have your shops, your boutiques downtown, and then around 9 o'clock, it starts to turn over. Because at 9 o'clock, the non-college people start, heading home, getting ready to go to sleep. College students start to kind of roll out around 9 o'clock. I'm sure you probably see that around here in Tallahassee. So all of a sudden, downtown turns over. It becomes a different kind of place. A place that I just had dinner at with my wife and my daughter, and might have had a pizza, might have had a nice Italian dinner. All of a sudden, it becomes a bar. And by the way, there are no bars in Virginia. There's some law that prevents bars, only restaurants. And you can't have more than 50% of sales. So I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it looks like a bar, smells like a bar, quacks like a bar. It's a bar to me. So at night, the downtown turns over. And it's the same downtown it was earlier in the day. It's just Blacksburg at night. And it becomes even more active in a different way than it was during the day. And it's really fun in a lot of ways because of all the youth that's there and all the things that the youth can do and bring to the downtown. And what's interesting is we offer a Citizens Institute through our police department, and I went through it when I first moved to Blacksburg. There were several people in there that had lived in Blacksburg for years and had no idea that this kind of life existed in Blacksburg because they just never ventured out. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, they're home, and again, that's when life is starting for young people. Game day is really fun, really a very active time in Blacksburg. I'm sure I saw it here today. We were on campus at Florida State and Doak Campbell Stadium, and we could see getting ready for the game on Saturday. And I think you guys actually started getting ready sooner than they do at Virginia Tech. So I wonder, it must be pretty crazy here. But starting Friday morning, Friday afternoon, you start really feeling a pickup in the town of people coming to the town. Because Blaine Stadium seats 60,000 people, and it's much smaller than Doak Campbell, but it's pretty sizable for a community our size in the area, and a lot of people are coming in to the town. So that brings a whole new dynamic to the town. So you've got 60,000 fans that come to town. Many of them are students, obviously. A lot of them are alumni or just fans that want to come see Virginia Tech. So you have this inflow of 60,000 people. It brings issues of just from a public safety standpoint, traffic management, trying to manage traffic. Well, we were at Tallahassee, I guess that's the city's traffic control center earlier today, and I think he said they had 300 traffic lights. We got 21. So, while traffic is always a challenge, you can manage it, especially you only got 21 traffic lights. There's really only 3 ways in and 3 ways out of Blacksburg, so you just get everybody in line and just keep it flowing out. But the games really present a great opportunity for the law enforcement to work together. And it's one of the reasons that the April 16th was turned out the way it did, that the number of people that survived and that lived that day. It's something that's often forgotten, is about the people that survived and the number of people that were saved that day. And what the game day does is present an opportunity 8 times a year for law enforcement from Blacksburg, from Virginia Tech, from the county, and surrounding counties and areas to get together and work a special event. It's essentially special operations, I think is what law enforcement would call it. They use the National Incident Management System, NIMS. They have a unified command, have an operations center. It's just as if it's any major, public safety event. In this case, it's a football game, 60,000 fans. Virginia Tech, and this was prior to me being there, at one point had a major lightning storm. So some of your football fans, you might remember, this game is actually kind of eerie because it was against Georgia Tech. Virginia Tech's playing tonight, and I know Frank wants to go see soon. But it was a major lightning storm, and it struck Lee Corso from ESPN. Actually, struck his rental-car and right behind the stadium. But the lightning was just dancing all around the stadium, so it had to evacuate 60,000 fans. That's not an easy prospect to do, and you can't do that unless you've got a coordinated effort through your law enforcement who've been there, done that, trained with each other, and worked together with each other. And also, another a unique feature of Blacksburg and Virginia Tech is we have volunteer fire and volunteer rescue, something that I wasn't used to where I came from, especially when you think about a community of our size. That it's a volunteer-based system. It's a very successful system. Both of them are fully staffed, fully trained, and are very recognized and accomplished in what they do. Virginia Tech has their own rescue squad that is staffed, and it's overseen by faculty and by administrative staff, but it's students that run the rescue squad, that run the calls. And those are the people that were there on April 16th as well, helping rescue people and bring people to aid. And there's some of the unsung heroes that were never really mentioned, is that you had people that were volunteers responding to that event on that day. You had students responding that day to their peers that were hurt. And I think that's something that has gone unmentioned. Frank was talking about some behavioral issues, and that's again something that we deal with on our town gown. And a lot of what we try to address is civility, is trying to get people just to respect each other. We understand that young people they're learning, they're going through life. We've all been there, enjoying life, but respect other people, respect their properties. And something that recently has come up this year is, and it's not just young people, it's people that have come to town. So it could be alumni, it could be non-students, but come to town. And had this come up this year where you had people that were doing things on people's yards that they shouldn't be doing. I'm not sure exactly how to describe that tactfully, but I think if you read the message there, it's telling people to be respectful of people's property. Don't do things on people's property that you shouldn't do, that you wouldn't even do on your own property. Be respectful, and that's a large part of what Virginia Tech has tried to do also through their Hokies Respect program, is getting people to respect each other. And it started through the athletics program, and I'm hoping maybe we can grab in our town gown and spread that out beyond just athletics. Because when you read the motto there about respect the moment, respect the opponent, the game, the competition, yourselves, you can really apply that to everyday life. I mean, we all make those sort of analogies to sports, especially at least in my office, since my boss played for Virginia Tech. We use football analogies a lot, but we should respect ourselves. If we have an issue we're dealing with somebody with where we agree that to continue disagreeing, at least us to be respectful in doing that. And I think by saying that you are being respectful, so respect is a big thing that we need to really emphasize in our community to help people continue to work together and grow together. And this is the end of the big football game, and once that ends, and it kind of gets eventful around town as people hopefully are celebrating another Virginia Tech victory. And these are just some pictures, of the community, of the campus and the community, just showing you, the beauty that we have, whether it be spring, fall, winter. We're very fortunate to live where we live. We're very fortunate to have, a university in a town, that get along so well together, is able to work well together, live well together, and address the concerns and the things that will go on everyday life on the campus or in town. And that's all I've got. I don't know if Frank has anything he'd like to add. Sure.
Let me first extend my thanks to Frank and to Steve for taking their time. These folks have been away from their community and from their work and from their families for 2 days to come visit with us and to share with us the things that they've learned as they've worked through issues in Blacksburg and at Virginia Tech, and we greatly appreciate them being here. So thank you very much for taking your time. We do appreciate it. I would like to open it up for questions now, and we are recording this, so if you have a question, we'd ask you to please use the mic here and step up and feel free to respond to that. But while they're doing that, why don't you guys go ahead and come up here, because I'm going to open with a question. Because one of the things that we talked about earlier that I thought was very interesting that I'd like to hear you talk about a little bit more, and I particularly think some of the law enforcement folks might be interested in, was you had talked about the way that adjudication of issues both in the community and in the university were handled in terms of how you manage that from the standpoint of who dealt with those issues from a standpoint of when crimes or issues were committed and how that. Would you talk a little bit about how the university and the community work together on that?
Sure. And what Mike's referring to is the way that we adjudicate issues of misconduct, and we adjudicate those the exact same way, whether they happen on campus or off campus. So any incident that happens off campus would be handled just the same way they would be handled if it happened in a residence hall on campus. We recently had our annual review where we bring some external review people in, and they were from other large institutions, and they said, we can't believe that you adjudicate off-campus issues. And we said, our town gown issues, our relationship with town is absolutely too important for us not to do that. And the way it plays out, the Blacksburg Police Department tells us all the time that students say, call my parents, call the police, take me to jail, give me a ticket, just don't tell Virginia Tech. So they do not want us to know about it, but we respond to it. So Blacksburg Police Department sends us everything that happens in the town, and they get a note from us, and then we work with it from there. But it really is because the relationship with the town is so important to us, and we work really hard to keep that collaborative relationship and to make sure that we're having conversations with students that Virginia Tech and the town of Blacksburg are the same as far as what we expect with regard to citizenship.
So I appreciate you guys coming. I get that you've got a good thing going, and I like the components you talked about, agreeing to continue disagree, all the talking. What I don't get is like how it came about. I get that it didn't always exist, the good town-gown relationship. So what happened? Why is it happening? What urgency was introduced? Leadership? I mean, you know that, yeah, the juice behind the change.
That's a great question, and it's one of the questions I asked when I came to Virginia Tech, because I came with this in place. As I understand it, we didn't like each other, and we got on each other's nerves, and we didn't understand one another, and that the tension eroded positive momentum with the town in a small town like Blacksburg and a large university like Virginia Tech, which means we're incredibly dependent upon one another. But so essentially, we had leadership who said enough is enough. We're just going to commit to one another, and we're going to commit to working on these in a regular, ongoing way. So all these circles of interaction that I shared with you are things that leaders developed, and I took the associate vice president's job because my boss was in this role, and he moved up to the vice president's role. And one of the first things he told me, this is a very important part of your job. The relationship we have with the town of Blacksburg, the kind of collaboration that we engage is an important part of being here. So I think there's a articulation, handing down from leadership that we're committed to this. You're expected to be engaged in these kinds of things. We're expected to collaborate. And I think that's changed the ethos. And so there's lots of commitment to that. And I think that's, in many regards, what you're doing here is this is the beginning of saying, we're in this together. We're going to keep at this. And I'll tell you what, from an educator working in higher education, this is what we want our students to leave and do. Because we're all different. We have different strengths and talents and resources, and if we put those together, but I think we've realized that in Blacksburg. But this is really only a decade old, and so we've come a long way in a short amount of time.
Yeah, too. I think this is a maturation process, like Frank mentioned, that it's been 10 years plus in the making, and Virginia Tech grew exponentially through the 70s and the 80s. And I think that's where a lot of the tensions came from, just through that growth. I think the university wanted to grow. I don't think they were maybe necessarily even ready for how the growth was going to really explode the way it did. And I know the town was. And that just created a lot of frictions and a lot of animosities and a lot of issues between the town and the university. And I think when the university slowed down on its growth about 10 years ago, I think we realized, we're both here for the long haul. And if we're going to be here for the long haul together, let's work together and get through some of these issues. And many of the issues we've gotten through, but some of them we're still working on. There's a large issue that we have between the town and the university, and we have what's called a meals tax in Virginia. So we can levy a tax on meals. Well, because Virginia Tech has such an outstanding dining program, ranked one of the best, if not the best, dining service in the country, because they've created this unique format that's modeled by the universities where they actually franchise the dining services. They are the franchise. Their position is they don't have to pay it because they're a state institution. Now, if they contracted those services, the contractor would pay that. And it comes out to maybe $500,000 a year of revenue that we feel we should be getting from the university. They say they shouldn't. We don't agree. But we do agree to continue to disagree on that issue. I think we've come a long way in the 10 years. We still have some growing pains that we continue to work on. Because one of our concerns right now with the university is, while they're not growing enrollment-wise, they're growing, physically growing, and they've grown off campus, and they're developing, projects, and they have a foundation, the Virginia Tech Foundation, that has investments in property, and they've invested in properties that are off the physical campus. And right now, some of those properties are taxable, but in the long term, what happens to those properties? Are they going to become university property and come off the tax rolls? Well, that's a concern to us, because that's taxable property values that we would lose. And we're having those conversations now about, okay, what are your plans, and how can we make sure that at the end it works out for the best for the both of us.
I think I want to mention, I think we sounded pretty Pollyanna about Blacksburg and Virginia. We've got all sorts of problems. And I think there's lots of town people who are very critical of big old Virginia Tech. But what is different is I think the leadership of the town and people who are in nonprofits and people who care about what the future is going to be are at the table on a regular basis working through the things. I'm pretty sure that we are going to keep talking about this meals tax issue, and we're going to come to a resolution at some point that's going to feel good to Virginia Tech and the town of Blacksburg. It's going to take us a long time to get there, and, you know, we say, are we going to talk about this again? And we go, yeah, but we are. We're going to keep talking about it, and we're committed to that.
My question is this, have you seen an increase in the volunteerism in the student body because of Town and Gown?
Absolutely, and one example is just this summer we had a town gown conference for students. It was put on in collaboration with Virginia Tech and the town of Blacksburg, and it was for students who are interested in civic engagement, and it was really a day-long workshop to learn about this. You know, what is civic engagement? Not community service, but what's civic engagement? What's it like to dig in, day out? And what we want them to do, whether they land in Blacksburg after they graduate or they come to Tallahassee, we want them to come here and engage and commit to being an active part of the building and rebuilding and building of the community.
I get to ask another one. I'd like to hear you talk just a little bit about what has changed in terms of the relationship between the university and the community since April 16, 2007.
Well, I do think my sense is, I think I know this as a fact, that it takes you out of your mindlessness and makes you mindful to the reality that our humanity is precious. And I think people, because of what happened at Virginia Tech and in Blacksburg, have a heightened sense of awareness that our humanity and our relationship with one another, no matter how different we are, what faith tradition, what socioeconomic background, what political affiliation, that our humanity and the way we care for one another really matters. And we see it in our students, we see it in our faculty and staff. It's very difficult to walk around our community and not encounter somebody who has been directly impacted by that. In our town, 32 people in one day. There's people all over the place that have a story related to this incident. I do worry. This is our first class that has first time at Virginia Tech that students really weren't there, and we worry. We worry that we'll forget, not forget about the people, but we'll go back into our mindlessness, and so one of the things that we're really trying to do is to not slip back into mindlessness that we forget to care for one another, and not need a crisis to jolt us into the kind of relationships and community. But I think our community is stronger. Wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I think our community is stronger. Steve, what?
I know we're a stronger community because of what happened, because we were able to to survive and to learn from that day. I think we are more mindful, and I think what Frank said reminds me that for those of us that were there and those of us that are here today, it's our responsibility to make sure that we don't slip back into a mindless being, and that we don't forget about each other and caring for each other, and making sure that we're protecting each other and caring about each other and doing the right things for each other. So those of us that were there, that live there, and continue to live there, that's our responsibility. We need to make sure that we help anyone that comes into our community to learn that, become that, to be it.
From a public safety perspective, what did you learn that day that you almost couldn't have learned any other way, that we wouldn't necessarily know until something like that happened to us? And in terms of sort of how the systems worked that day and how they could have improved, or just lessons learned on the other side of the tragedy.
I mean, I can only speak from my perspective as an administrator. I'm not a law enforcement officer. I'm not public safety. I can give it from my perspective, and I can't tell you how proud I am of all the law enforcement, all those first responders that day, and what they did to save hundreds of people, because that's another lost story in that day, or the hundreds of people that survived and that lived that day. I think what that day showed us is how fortunate we are that we have such good, professional, trained first responders that did what they did that day. They did things that many of us could not do, would not do, because we're just not able to do it. They went into the building while many people would be leaving the building. Obviously, they're trained to do that, but they did it well. They saved hundreds of people, and I don't think you can be any prouder of a group of people than you are, those first responders. So those are things I think that we learned, that how fortunate we are to have that in our community.
I think all colleges and universities have been affected, and clearly one of the things that we know is to pay attention. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, if it can happen at Virginia Tech, it can happen anywhere. And so to pay attention, to be aware, there's lots of new systems, and that's why I'm part of the threat assessment team at Virginia Tech, and we review any cases that might be concerned. That's 3 hours of every week of mine is doing that. But that's where and we've got lots of new protocols. I'm sure the institutions here have lots of new protocols and policies, but that's where I try to emphasize that is one element of public safety. The other part is just being a good human being and creating systems where being a good human being is part of the ethos, the aspiration of the place, and that's talked about. Virginia Tech has adopted 5 aspirations for student learning, and one of them is practice civility. We talk to students all, who is it difficult for you to be kind to? Pay attention to that person and work with yourself to engage them in a spirit of kindness, because they're difficult for you to be kind to. So I think it's these kinds of things that do the policy and the protocol and the safety kinds of things, care for people in a technical kind of way, and also be very clear about your community expectations, to what kind of community you aspire to be. What does that look like? And then most importantly, I think you celebrate the people and the processes and the places where that stuff happens. And you celebrate that and say, this is what we want to be.
I'd like that too, Frank said. And I think from the town's perspective, we're very appreciative of the university recognizing the responsibility that they have for the off-campus students. That's my understanding and knowledge. That's not always a common theme, that the university takes responsibility for the actions and behaviors of the students that are living off campus. Virginia Tech has made great strides, and Frank has been at the front of doing that as well, of really recognizing, the campus extends out beyond its physical boundaries. So in this case, they have 9,000 or 20,000 students that are living off campus that should be held to the same expectations that they would be if they're on campus. And that really helps a lot in working with our relationships, whether it be on a day-to-day basis of dealing with neighborhood issues or law enforcement issues or whatever it might be.
Frank, earlier today you were talking about how town and gown has become so important in Blacksburg that it's actually part of your annual evaluation. That you've talked about the importance of the relationships and the relational aspects of town and gown collaboration. But 15 or 20 years from now, when maybe neither of you guys are in the positions you're in, somebody else is in those positions, I'd like to just elaborate more on the formal mechanisms that you've created to ensure that down the road this kind of collaboration and this kind of emphasis on town and gown is sustained.
know something we don't know.
Yeah, well, this is absolutely true. Steve has to like me or I don't get a raise. So, just kidding. No, it's not true. Well, I'll give you an example. So I come into Blacksburg, appointed new associate vice president. My vice president spends the first 3 months taking me around to town people and taking me to the town gown committee meeting, taking me to the town tech lunch. It was very clear to me that that was important to him, that he was mentoring me and what his expectations were of me. It's written into my job description, and I think it's I'm the deputy to the vice president. He didn't relegate it to a brand new professional who's come to Virginia Tech. So I think there's very much a system of mentoring and handing down the responsibilities, and it is in my evaluation that it is part of my job responsibilities and how I'm being successful at the ways that I engage this responsibility. And I shared with you a little bit, I think it's very important symbolically that the deputy town manager and the associate vice president for student affairs co-chair this committee. And every month we get together, we talk about all sorts of issues that are of concern. But also people who report to me, our director of student conduct, our director of fraternity and sorority life, they're at these meetings too, and they understand this is important to me. So everyone up and down the organizational structure are learning that this is an important relationship, and how we treat it matters to Virginia Tech. It's part of the ethos now, and so I think that's probably an important thing. And I think you've got a lot of leaderships here that say, no, this is important to us too.
I'm frankly proud because I realized I was listening to him earlier. You talked about the amplifying loops, and we talked about these meetings. Yes, he and I meet with town gown. He and I have individual meetings, but there's a lot of other folks in our organizations that get together, and not just to meet, but really to accomplish things and establish relationships. And while it's in my evaluation and it's in my staff's evaluations on town gown, it's the culture that we're creating, and I think is more important than a policy. I'm not an academic. I'm all about let's create the culture, make sure this continues. My legacy will not be successful in my mind when I leave, and I guess within the next 15 years. That when I leave, if this doesn't continue, then I was not successful in doing what I need to do. We want to create a culture throughout both our organizations of relationship building, working together, same common goal, same common good, whether it be at our levels or it be on a cold winter day with 2 feet of snow on the ground and the town needs salt, and the only place to get it is Virginia Tech. So if that public works driver can go over to Virginia Tech and ask them for the salt because they know each other and they know we're here to do the same thing, that to me is an example of a successful town gown relationship.
We got time for one more question.
Oh, no,
All right. First of all, I'd like to say that my wife is a Hokie. She went to Virginia Tech, and so did all her siblings, and her family still lives there. So when the events happened, it reached all the way down here and grabbed us. But I'd like to ask a question, kind of piggybacking on what she said about the public. When events like that happen at Virginia Tech and up at the University of Alabama, one being a natural event, other being man-made, are there systems in place, or have they been put in place since, that will communicate a message to the university as well as to the community? Since the community is a very small fraction of the overall population, do you work collectively to bring a message both to the student population and to the public during those events, or as those events are occurring, such as a natural catastrophe like a tornado?
I'll start. Steve and I both participated with really all of the town, most of Montgomery County, with all our disaster relief agencies and nonprofits. We participated in a drill together twice a year. And so we did that. We did this summer. It was an all-day drill. We don't know what the critical incident is going to be, but we play it out just like it happened. I can't remember what happened this year. Yeah, we had a bomb, and it went off in steam. But we play it out. But everybody from all our different agencies are together. We're testing out our communication protocols, our liaisons with one another, our communications with students, the communication directors from the town, county, how we work with the Red Cross, all those kinds of. So we do that at least twice a year that we're drilling on those things.
And that's in addition to to what I spoke about earlier. These 8 special operation days we have a year. Some people call them game days. The police department calls them special operations because it brings all these people together that we use in a drill. So when we do these drills, while it's good to practice, obviously, and get things down, everybody knows each other already. They're familiar with some of the exercises, just some of the fine-tuning. But when you were talking about message, I was thinking about sort of during an event, Virginia Tech has an alert system, and we have an alert system in the town to let people know of events in as timely a manner as you possibly can, as things happen very quickly. But I was also thinking about the message of healing for a community, which is very important because, again, what happened in 2007, there was a community that was very fractured, emotionally, and there was a lot of healing that had to be done, and that was a message that we had to send out, both as your local government and just members of your community, letting people know what services were available, counseling for grieving, those types of things. And I think it's important too. And I remember when Frank was hired, which is another great thing that Virginia Tech has done, is include the town in some of their hiring practices when they bring in people, like a vice president Frank's position or some other position. They include the town on those committees. But I can remember Frank coming in because you interviewed about a year after that event, and I remember telling him, something that if he were to get the position, something that he really needs to keep an eye out on, because he wasn't here, are all those people that were there. Because a lot of us who were there, we deal with it in our own ways, but sometimes we don't realize how certain things might be affecting us and impacting us. When you've got a fresh set of eyes, we can come in and help from a different perspective that's been really, really valuable.
One last comment. We implemented one of the things that's been really clear to me as an outsider post 2007 is how many people in our community are still grieving and traumatized. And a lot of our grief folks are saying it's just now, or many people are just beginning to emerge. And so we have engaged a number of programs to support people in their grief now that is just now starting to emerge. So much time has elapsed, but it's still very fresh for many people.
Thank you, Steve. Thank both of you very much for taking your time again. We know that you're away from your community and from your jobs and from your families, and we also recognize that you have a great concern over whether Virginia Tech's defense is going to be able to stop Georgia Tech tonight. So we'll stop the program here. We promised we'd have everybody out by 8:30, and if I'm reading that clock correctly, it says 8:30. So thank you all very much for being here. We would like for you to think about the next meeting. Mark down your calendars for January 26th, when the San Jose State University and the City of San Jose will be here in Tallahassee to talk about economic development partnership. Thank you all very much for your time, and thank you, gentlemen, for your visit to Tallahassee.